nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated, sir. And then would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Dr. Carol R. Olson, O-L-S-O-N.
Dr. Olson, how are you employed?
I'm a primary care physician located in the West Dallas area.
And you're licensed to practice medicine in the state of Wisconsin.
Yes, I am.
By virtue of that license, are you permitted to prescribe drugs to people when they complain of illnesses to you?
Yes.
As part of that practice of medicine, did you ever treat anyone known to you as Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes.
Is he seated in the courtroom now?
We'll stipulate to identification.
Very well.
During the course of your treatment of Mr. Dahmer, did he ever inform you that he had problems sleeping?
Yes, he did.
And did he state he had problems sleeping because he worked third shift?
That's what he told me.
And would this be on or about July 31st, 1986?
That's correct.
And did you believe him?
Yes, I did.
As a result of his complaint, did you prescribe hypnotics or sleeping pills, which is what we're calling? We're not going to name the actual drug.
Yes, I did prescribe for him.
And did you continue to treat Mr. Dahmer up through April 12th of 1990?
Yes, I did.
During the course of that treatment, did Mr. Dahmer continue to complain of having difficulties sleeping?
Yes, he did.
And because he complained of that, did you continue to prescribe the same drug?
Yes, I prescribed the same drug.
Based on the number of prescriptions with the allowable refills over those 4 years, would it be possible for Jeffrey Dahmer to have refilled that prescription as many as 17 times?
Yes, that's possible.
No further questions.
Cross-examination, Mr. Boyle.
Dr. Olson, if I came to you as a patient and described for you the same things that Mr. Dahmer described to you over the same period of time that he was describing him to you, you would have given me the same prescription, correct?
Yes, I would.
That's all. Thanks, Doc.
Redirect.
Just one question. At the end of your treatment of Mr. Dahmer, you actually expressed concern that he was taking this drug so frequently that he might become addicted to it. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And at that time, it's your information, he switched doctors, correct?
I did not see him after that. I would have to assume that that's what happened.
No further questions.
I have no questions.
You may step down, doctor. Thank you.
Judge, you asked us to alert you to a particular witness. That witness.
Okay, we're going to take a brief recess, after which we'll hear from our next witness. Jury may retire to the jury room, please. Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear all testimony you're about to give this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated. And then, sir, would you tell us your name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Ronald Douglas Flowers Jr. Last name spelled F-L-O-W-E-R-S.
Just pull the mic towards you a little bit, Mr. Flowers. Thank you. Mr. Flowers, how are you presently employed?
I'm a counselor at Lake County Division of Mental Health.
And how long have you been employed with the Lake County Division of Mental Health?
Well, this is my second time working there again in the same position, and I started the beginning of April of this year to the present, and I was employed, and then I took an absence for about a year, and I worked there for a year before that.
And you received your undergraduate education at UW Eau Claire, UW Stout, and also did journalism work at Houston Tillotson College in Austin, Texas, correct?
That is correct.
And is it fair to say that you've been working primarily with mentally ill and developmentally disabled folks since 1985?
Yes, it is.
In the course of that job, are you given the opportunity to observe the signs and symptoms of mental illness and developmental disabilities?
Yes, I have.
And during the course of your employment, have you also had in-service training in recognizing those signs and symptoms and working with the mentally ill?
Yes, many of them.
I'd like to draw your attention to April of 1988, if I may. At that time, how were you employed?
At that time, I worked at a different agency in Zion called the Lake County Society for Human Development. I worked in the vocational development department with a team of other people. My primary responsibilities were case management and skill training for people with developmental disabilities and mental illnesses, placing them in work situations in the community.
I'd like, when you're talking Zion, Illinois?
That is correct.
And Lake County is in Illinois, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'd like to draw your attention specifically to April 2nd of 1988. Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall having any plans for that evening?
Yeah. Initially, I was going to purchase a waterbed from a friend of mine. Excuse me.
And how did, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
But when I went to pick the waterbed up, she hadn't finished draining it. And I had talked to some friends of mine earlier who were making plans to come up to Milwaukee with them, so I just decided to wait until later to pick the bed up and join them in Milwaukee.
Okay. How did you intend to pay for that waterbed?
Well, she wanted $200 for it, so I had the $200 in my wallet, and I also brought some extra money because I was hoping maybe she would be interested in. She was in the process of moving, and she was selling a lot of things, and I just took extra money just in case she had something else.
Approximately how much in cash did you have on you that evening?
That I don't know. It was probably between 250 and I know it was at least 250 and probably more. I'm not sure how much extra I took, but
when you found out you couldn't get your waterbed, you decided you were going to go join your friends?
yeah. If we wanted to go all together, but since I was going to get the waterbed, I couldn't. And then I just decided that since I knew that where they were going to be, I would just meet them there.
Okay. Where were your friends going to be at?
219 2nd Street.
Okay. And what's located at 219 2nd Street?
There's a nightclub called Club 219.
And is that in Milwaukee?
Yes, it is.
And is that primarily a gay club?
Yes, it is.
Approximately what time did you get to the Club 219 that evening?
Not real sure. I know it was late because the parking lot was pretty filled at the time, so I imagine it was 11:30 around that time.
Okay. And did you meet your friends there?
Yes, I did.
What are their names?
Bonnie, Carol, and Matt.
And did you have any difficulty locating them when you got to the bar?
No, they were right straight in the back. They're in a group talking, so it was pretty easy to find them.
Okay. Were you drinking that evening?
No, I was not.
Why not?
Because I needed to go in the morning and pick the waterbed up, set it up, and get back to Wisconsin. I had planned on attending an Easter dinner at my grandmother's house, so I wanted to get all the things that I had to do done before I had to go to dinner.
So were you living in Wisconsin at this time?
No, I was not.
You were living in Illinois in Lake County?
Yes, I was.
Well, what did you do at the bar if you weren't drinking?
Oh, actually, my friends and I are kind of like a close-knit group. We all lived in the same vicinity in Illinois, within a mile of each other, and we were always together, so we were engaged in pretty intense conversation, kidding each other and, that kind of thing.
But how late did you stay at the bar that night?
Probably pretty close to around closing. I know that people had started to leave when we left, so it must have been around 2, a little before 2 maybe.
At any time, did you see Jeff Dahmer in the Club 219 that evening?
No, I did not.
After the bar closed, what next occurred?
Well, I walked, there's a parking lot located across the street, and we all walked out together. And their car was in the front of the parking lot, and we all said goodbye at my friend Matt's car, and he left. And they all left, and I went back to my car and tried to start it.
Okay. You say they left. Does that mean you saw them drive off?
Yes.
Okay. And you went to your car, and you said before your car was parked some distance away because you got there late. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, what kind of car were you driving?
It was a 78 Oldsmobile Regency.
And when you tried to start your car, what happened?
Well, I had been having a problem with my choke, so I imagine that was what the problem was, and it wouldn't start. And after I kept trying it and kept trying it, the battery just died.
Pardon me. What did you do next?
Well, then I went to the phone booth, which is located on the corner of 2nd Street and Pittsburgh, I believe it is. There's a little phone booth there. And I started making telephone calls to my friends to see if I can get one of them to come and give me a jump.
Okay. How far is that phone booth located from the Club 219?
It's on the same side of the street, about a half a block down.
And were you able to contact any of your friends to give you a ride home?
No, probably because it was still early, and most of them were either still out or there were sometimes people go to breakfast and that kind of thing after. So I just kept calling and kept calling and kept calling.
How many calls do you think you made?
I don't know, a lot. I called some of the numbers more than once. I couldn't tell you.
As you were standing at this phone booth, was there anybody else waiting in line to use the phone?
Actually, yeah, there were probably 4 or 5 people standing behind me.
And when you weren't getting a hold of anyone, what did you do?
Oh, I was getting pretty irritated, and sometimes I would slam the phone down and pick it up and try again and mumble and grumble to myself because it was I was irritated.
And what did you hear anything from the folks behind you waiting in line?
Not anything in particular. I could tell that they were getting a little antsy behind me, but I didn't hear anything in particular.
So what did you finally do?
I decided to think about it and collect my thoughts, so I stepped to the side and I was looking through my phone list again, trying to think of maybe someone else who I had forgotten about that could possibly help me.
Before making your phone calls, do you recall seeing Mr. Dahmer?
No, I do not.
Okay, when you were sitting there looking at your list, did you come in contact with the person you now know as Jeff Dahmer?
Yes, I did.
Is he seated in the courtroom now?
Yes, he is.
Could you identify him by where he's seated and what he's wearing?
Stipulate to Mr.
Can you tell me about that initial encounter with Mr. Dahmer?
Well, he basically approached and started talking. I really wasn't paying very much attention to him at the time because it was more like I was preoccupied with getting my car fixed and getting back home. So it was more like he just started talking and it was more of an annoyance than anything.
Did you make any observations of him at that time?
At that time, no.
Okay. Did there come a time when you started talking to him?
Yeah, after he kept talking and he asked me what was wrong, and I told him that my car was broken down and I was trying to find some friends of mine to help me get it going so I can get back home.
And What did Mr. Dahmer say in reply to that?
He said that he had come down to the bars and he thought that he was going to be drinking, so he didn't drive his car down. He took a taxi in case he would get too intoxicated to drive.
Did you say anything else?
I probably.
Okay. What happened next?
Well, then he of course he offered to give me a ride to go with him to get his car, to bring it back, to jump start my car, and that was about the first time that he really caught my attention. Mostly because it seemed as though he had the solution to the problem that I was trying to work on. So then I began to talk to him.
Okay. And what'd you say when you started talking to him?
Well, he asked a lot of questions. He told me initially that he had recently moved to Milwaukee from Ohio. He told me, asked me about if I was from Milwaukee. Of course, I told him that I wasn't, that I was from Racine and I lived in Illinois. And then he asked me what I had been doing that night, I believe. I told him that I was at the 219. He told me that he was at, he rattled off a whole bunch of bars, C'est La Vie, The Phoenix, La Cage, I believe.
Did he appear to understand what you were saying?
Yes.
Did he carry on an intelligent conversation?
Yes, he did.
At any time were his answers incoherent or unable for you to understand them?
No, they weren't.
Did you make any observations of him at this time?
Yeah, he asked me an awful lot of questions that I thought basically were small talk. He asked me about my job, and of course I explained to him in generic terms what I do. And then I have a habit of turning, when you ask me a question, I have a habit of turning the question back on you. So if you say, "How are you?" to me, I'll say, "Fine, thank you, how are you?" So when he asked me about my job, I asked him about his job. He told me that he worked at a factory in downtown and he did electrical work of some kind. And then he asked me again about my job, if I liked it, and he told me that he admired people who did the kind of work that I do, and I must be a patient person, and you know, that kind of question. He also asked me if I made a lot of money, which I thought was a pretty odd question, and I told him basically an answer like, I'm not starving, but I'm not getting rich either, you know, basic generic answer.
Did you make any observations about Mr. Dahmer's manner or demeanor or how he carried himself at this time?
Yeah, he appeared as though he may have been drinking, but he wasn't extremely drunk. And the reason I say appear is a lot of times you'll see people who have been drinking, they'll have like a wide stance to stable himself. He wasn't stumbling or anything like that. He didn't hold eye contact very long. He would look at my eyes, but then when my eyes would contact his, he would look away, which was kind of uncomfortable.
Do you have any reason for subjecting him to this kind of scrutiny at this time, looking at him that carefully?
Of course. He had offered to give me a ride home, and usually if you get in a car with someone who has been drinking, you probably want to scrutinize him pretty closely.
At this point, did you think he was intoxicated or not knowing what he was doing?
No, I thought that he had been drinking, but he was very in control of himself. He was in control of his speech, and he wasn't stumbling, so he appeared to be.
What occurred next?
Well, somewhere in the process, he told me that he had already called a taxi cab and that I could share the ride with him to his house. He said he lived on just west of here, west of where we were, as he described it. And then we would get in his car and come back and give me a jump, and that'd be fine. Because of him volunteering, I guess you could say, to be a good Samaritan, I was pretty suspicious of his motives. So I made it perfectly clear that my intentions were to get my car and get home, and that was the extent of what was ever going to happen. I had no interest in sex, no interest in conversation, no interest in anything but getting my car and getting home.
And did he appear to understand that?
Yes. In fact, I asked him twice during that conversation, and he politely and calmly said, sure, no problem.
Did there come a time when the cab showed up?
Yes, it did.
And did both you get in the cab?
Yes.
And what did Mr. Dahmer tell the cab driver?
He told the cab driver, he asked him where to, and he said 55th and Lincoln.
About how long did that cab ride last?
5, 10, 15 minutes maybe, I'm not real sure.
And where were you dropped off, if you know?
Well, when we got around the vicinity, he told the cab driver to just make a left here. And the cab driver was saying, is it on the first house? Is it in the middle of the block? Is it on the end of the block? Is it on the right or left-hand side? And he didn't give him a specific answer. He just kept saying a little further here, up here, up here. And then finally, when he got halfway down the block, he said, pull over here. And the cab driver pulled over to the right. And we got out of the cab, and he paid the cab driver.
Except for telling the cab driver what to do, did you have any conversation with Mr. Dahmer, or did he have any conversation in the cab at all?
Not to my knowledge, I don't remember any.
So it was basically a silent cab ride up to that point?
Yeah, that was one of the first times that I'd ridden in a cab, so I was pretty much taking in, looking at the meter and then how dirty it was and that kind of thing.
Excuse me, could you talk up just a little bit? Your voice is trailing off at the end. We're just missing the end there.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
You got out of the cab at the middle of a block. You're not exactly sure where. Is that correct?
Right.
What happened then?
Well, then I pointed to the house in front of us, and I said, is this the house? And he was like, no, it's down this way a little. And then I said, well, is it at the end of the block? And I'm trying to pin him down, too, so I know where I was going. And he said, no. He also explained that he had the cab drop us off a little ways away from the house because he didn't want to wake, he lived with his grandmother, and he didn't want to wake her up by the noise of the car.
Approximately how far did you walk to get to his grandmother's house?
I'd say a block and a half, because what he did was he went down the block and back around and halfway up the other block, walking.
At some time you arrived at the grandmother's house, right?
Correct.
What happened when you arrived there?
I said, I'll just wait for you here. He was going in to get his keys, I believe. And I said, I'll just wait for you here. And he said, no, why don't you just come on in? It'll just be a minute. So he opened the door with his key, punched in some alarm numbers on the alarm system, and then he went upstairs. And as he started to go upstairs, I heard a voice that sounded to be coming from an adjacent room that was on the same level, and the voice was an elderly woman's voice, and she said, "Is that you, Jeff?"
And did Dahmer reply?
Yeah, he walked over to the doorway to where the sound was coming from, and he said, "Yeah, it's me, Grandma. I'm just going to make myself a cup of coffee."
Were you there at that time?
Yeah, and then I started saying, I don't have time for a cup of coffee. I really do have to go. I've got a lot of things to do in the morning. I have to go, and I just kept repeating myself.
Were you speaking fairly loudly at this time?
I wouldn't say fairly loud, but my voice does carry usually pretty well.
Did you believe the person in the next room would have heard you?
Yes, she would have.
What did Dahmer do then?
Well, then he's basically disregarded what I said, and he said, well, I'm kind of tired. I have to have a cup of coffee. And he walked over to the other part of the kitchen, by where the coffee pot was and started to make coffee. And then I think he got a bottle from somewhere. I believe it was from a cabinet that was right overhead of Bailey's Irish cream liqueur. And he offered me a drink. And I said, no, I really have to go. I don't have time.
Did you ever see him reach to go get the keys for a car or anything like that?
No. He was going to supposedly have a quick cup of coffee first.
What did you do at this point?
Well, I was standing right, I guess it would be behind him, facing him where the coffee pot was, and he had his back to me, pouring water and mixing coffee or something, I don't know. Excuse me.
And as he continued to make coffee, were you talking with him at all, or was he talking to you?
Yeah, but he was saying, he kept trying to convince me to have some Bailey's Irish cream, and I was explaining to him that I wasn't going to drink because I had to get up early in the morning and I had a lot to do. And he asked me if I wanted a cup of coffee, and I initially said no, I have too much to do. And
how did he respond when you said no?
Well, he seemed to be a bit on the nervous side. He just kept pressing the issue. Well, it'll only be a quick one. It won't take very long. We'll hurry up. As soon as I have a cup of coffee, we'll leave. That type of thing.
What did you decide to do then?
Then I decided, well, a cup of coffee probably wouldn't hurt, and I would just drink it fast and be gone. Then we'd be able to leave.
Did he ask you what you took in your coffee?
Yes, he did.
What did you say?
Cream and sugar.
At any time when he was making the coffee, did he block the coffee cups with his body, separating your vision of the coffee cups from you?
Yes. He was doing it facing the cabinet, which was facing the wall, and his back was towards me.
Was he continuing to talk with you at this time?
No, not at all.
Did there come a time that he handed you the cup of coffee?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember anything about him at that point?
Yeah, he seemed to have calmed down a little bit. He wasn't talking. He didn't seem nervous, and he just looked at me.
What happened next that you recall?
The next thing I recall happening was thinking to myself, why is he looking at me like that? Because for the first time, his eye contact was solid. He didn't divert it at all. And it was almost as though he was waiting for something. I'm thinking to myself, what is he waiting for? So naturally, I started to drink the coffee quicker because I became uneasy to get out of there. And the next thing I remember was becoming extremely dizzy and my head starting to go down, and that's it.
When you say "and that's it," do you mean you passed out?
Yes.
What's your next memory?
Woke up in County General Hospital in Milwaukee.
County General Hospital here in Milwaukee?
Yes.
Had you suffered any injuries?
Yes,
Could you describe them, please?
I had an abrasion right about here that looked like a rug burn, a couple more on the side of my face.
I'd like the record to reflect he's indicating his right temple and right cheekbone.
And I had another abrasion about this size on my right hip. They all looked like carpet burns.
Okay. And when he said about this size, he was indicating diameter of approximately 1.5 to 2 inches. Oh, I apologize. Did you have any idea how you got to that hospital?
None.
Do you have any recollection of how you received those injuries?
None.
Were you missing any property?
Yeah, I was missing, excuse me, I was missing all the cash from my wallet, and I was missing a bracelet that was on my right arm and a herringbone chain that was around my neck.
If you know, did the hospital remove your clothing at any time?
No, they did not. I don't think they had a reason to.
When you next undressed, did you notice anything wrong with your clothing?
Yes.
What was that?
I noticed that my underwear were on inside out.
In addition to your underwear being on inside out, did you notice anything else that was different about your body when you undressed?
I noticed that I had some bruises on my neck, and there was a white hair on me.
Okay. And where was that white hair?
My pubic hair.
On your pubic hair. When you realized that your property had been taken, did you ever file a robbery complaint?
I filed a complaint, but the complaint was robbery, drugging, the whole 9 yards.
And where did you do that?
West Allis Police Department.
And to your knowledge, were charges ever brought?
No.
When did you file that report?
That evening sometime. It must have been between 10:30 and 11:30 that evening.
When you say that evening, do you mean the evening you got out of the
It
hospital?
was Easter Sunday evening.
Do you recall ever encountering Mr. Dahmer again?
Yes.
When did that occur?
It occurred at Club 219 again. One of the things I noticed about him.
When did that occur about? How long after this incident?
Probably a year. I really
Okay,
couldn't tell.
probably a year.
It was quite some time. I'd looked for him after it, but was unable to find him.
Okay. How did you recognize him?
He had, when we were talking at the corner, I noticed he had some shoes that were ugly.
They were ugly shoes. Can you describe his ugly shoes for us?
They're like the old hush puppy type, the kind you used to wear when you were a kid. I never liked them, so that's basically how I remember
Okay.
them.
The ones with the thin laces and
Yeah,
what color were they?
tan.
Okay. Why are you bringing that up with regard to this case, how you recognized him the next time you saw him at the 219?
Because I was ready to, actually, my friend who I was with was ready to go, and I was standing by the door trying to finish my cocktail before I left. And he was behind me saying, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And when I looked down, I saw a pair of shoes like that. And at least I don't see that many kind of shoes. And it reminded me of the incident. And then when I looked up, he was standing right next to me.
Did you say anything to him?
Yeah, I said, "You remember me?"
And what did he say?
He said, "No, I don't. My name is Jeff." And he extended his hand.
What happened then?
I said, I didn't shake his hand, and I basically went off. I started by saying, you know who the fuck I am, etc., so on and so forth.
You were angry?
Yes.
How did he reply?
Well, he kept his eyes on me, but he just insisted that he didn't know who I was, and he said something like, "Well, maybe we could." He said, "I really don't remember who you are, but maybe we can go have a cup of coffee and talk about it," or something like that. Something to that. He did mention go have a cup of coffee and talk about it, which made me even more irate.
Do you believe he remembered who you were?
Oh, I know he did.
No doubt in your mind that he knew who you
None.
were? What happened next?
He left and went outside, and my friends noticed a change in me, I guess you could say. And I was outside yelling and screaming and cussing and threatening to kill him and all kinds of things, and they wouldn't let me get near him.
What happened next?
I saw him talking to a black man who was maybe a quarter of the block down, and they were just standing there talking the whole time. I'm screaming and saying horrible things. And then a taxi cab pulled up, and they both walked to the taxi cab.
What did you do?
I started screaming, "Don't go with him, he's crazy, stay the fuck away from him." I was just belligerent, I guess.
What happened next?
Well, the black guy looked at him, he looked at me, he looked at him, he looked at him again, and then he just walked away.
And then what did Mr. Dahmer do?
He got in the taxi cab and left.
When you called him crazy, did you mean that he was developmentally disabled?
No.
Did you mean that you thought he was suffering from schizophrenia?
No.
Did you mean that you thought he had a psychosis?
No.
What did you mean by crazy?
He does weird things. It's the only way I could describe it.
Did you mean to suggest that he had a mental illness?
No, I did not.
In all the time you spent with Jeff Dahmer, counting that date in April of 1988 and the time the year later, did you ever believe he was hearing voices?
No, there's no evidence of that.
Did you ever believe he was having hallucinations?
No, I did not.
Did you ever observe him going into a stupor,
What do you mean by a stupor?
staring in almost like a trance-like state?
No.
Did you ever observe him having racing thoughts?
No.
What do you mean by racing thoughts?
What do I mean by
Yeah.
racing thoughts? The thoughts, they don't come to your head coherently. Like you may have one thought that zooms in, and then another one is completely not connected to that one come in, and then another one that's not connected to either one of them come in. It's like a rapid thought process where you think of a lot of different things that seem to be unrelated.
And you see that among the mentally ill people, correct?
Oh yeah, all the time.
But did you see that with Jeff Dahmer?
No, I did not.
Did he ever respond to questions in an irrational manner?
No, he did not.
Did he ever respond to questions in an incoherent manner?
No, he did not.
Did you ever think he was having something like a Shirley MacLaine former life experience?
No, I did not.
Based on your observations of Jeffrey Dahmer's conduct, actions, manner, expression, and conversations, and your training and experience, did you believe he was ever suffering from a mental illness?
No, I did not.
Based on your observations of Jeffrey Dahmer's conduct, actions, manner, expressions, and conversations, and your training and experience, did you believe he at any time had difficulty distinguishing right from wrong?
No, I did not.
Based on your observations of Jeffrey Dahmer's conduct, actions, manner, expressions, and conversations, and your training and experience, did you believe Jeffrey Dahmer had any mental illness that would impair his ability substantially to conform his conduct to the requirements of law?
I noticed nothing that would clue me off that he was suffering from a mental illness at all.
Could you speak up? I'm sorry.
I've noticed nothing that would clue me off that there's a possibility that he could be suffering from a mental illness, the ones that I know of at least, at all. Nothing.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Flowers, as far as your training is concerned in the medical field, you're not a medical doctor, are you?
No, I am not.
Okay. Could you tell me just a little bit further as to what exactly your medical training consists of?
Medical training?
That's correct.
I do not have medical training.
Psychological training?
My training is through in-services through the health department, developmental facilities and the sort.
Okay. What does that mean? What do you do?
What do I do? Well, we have some training recognizing signs and symptoms of various mental illnesses, how to treat mental illnesses, behaviors that are associated with mental illness.
You don't actually do the treating, though, do you?
Pardon me?
You don't actually do the treating, though, do you? That has to be done through a licensed doctor, does it
Yes,
not?
that is correct.
Okay. Going back to the night that you were talking about here, relative to the time that you had gone over to Dahmer's grandmother's house, when you had gone in, you had persistently said that you wanted to leave because you were in a hurry, correct?
Correct.
Was there ever a time that you became adamant in the fact that you just wanted to leave?
Yeah, but that would have been quite difficult since I didn't have transportation.
Okay, you never asked to use the telephone to call for a taxi?
No, because he was going to finish his cup of coffee and we were going to leave. I didn't feel it was necessary.
Okay. So it wasn't holding you up all that much to have that cup of coffee?
No, it wasn't, but I wanted to be on my way home by then.
Okay, and at that point in time, you've indicated you really didn't see anything strange about the fact that he wanted you to have a cup of coffee with him?
No, I did not. It was late at night. A lot of people have coffee late at night.
Okay. You'd indicated that you heard the grandmother talking to Jeff, is that correct?
I heard an elderly woman, yes.
Okay. Was there ever a time that you came to learn that the grandmother came into the room, or interrupted Jeffrey in any way?
Was there a time that...
That you ever came to learn that the grandmother ever entered the room? Did you ever see her?
No, I did not.
Okay. And you don't know whether or not there was ever a time throughout the course of the evening that she would have come in and interrupted anything that may have taken place after you were unconscious?
I was unconscious, so I really couldn't.
Okay. I'm just saying you never came to learn that later.
No.
Okay. You indicated that you had called the police the night that you were released from the hospital, is that correct?
No, I went to the police station.
You went to the police station, and this was in West Dallas?
Yes.
Okay. And that was the night of Easter?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and that was the very next day after this occurrence had taken place that night before?
That is correct.
And when you went to the police station, did you ever come to learn why they never issued any charges against Mr. Dahmer?
Objection. Sustained.
When you had gone in and reported this to the police, did you indicate Mr. Dahmer's name?
Not per se. I told them that I knew his name was Jeff or Jim or something like that.
Did you report to them where you had seen him or met him that evening?
Yes, I did.
Did you also report the house that you were at?
I took them to the house.
You did take them. A year later, you had said approximately it was that you saw Jeffrey again in the 219 Club, is that correct?
That is correct.
Could you narrow it down as to time for us a little bit better at all? Was it about that same time a year later, or was it a little closer in time?
I really couldn't tell you.
Okay, that's fine. You had indicated, I believe, on direct that you, at one point in time, looked for him during the course of this year. Is that what I'm correct in assuming?
That is true.
Okay. Where did you go to look for him? How was it that you went about this?
I just basically went to bars and looked for him.
Could I ask what you're planning on doing if you would have found him?
Objection, Ronald. Sustained.
We'll work it backwards. You'll see the relevancy, Your Honor, in one moment. That you indicated there came a time that you did, in fact, run into Mr. Dahmer, correct?
Yes.
And that was again at the 219?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, you've indicated that you became irate and you were talking to him after you had talked to him because you basically thought that he was kind of a crazy man, correct?
No, basically, I became that way because I was upset with what had happened to me.
Okay, I understand that. But at the time that you were having a conversation with him, were you there with any other friends?
Yes, I was.
Did you at any time direct any of your friends to call the police?
Why would I call the police?
You've now found him.
Pardon me?
You've now found him.
I found him before.
You had found him again
I
another
took
time
them to
between
the
that
house.
year's time?
No, I took them immediately after I got out of the hospital. I took them to the house where I had been.
So the police had interviewed him at that time?
I believe they had.
Okay. Could you tell me, please, I just want to, just for clarification here, get down the date of the instance that you were with Mr. Dahmer at the grandmother's house?
It was the Saturday before Easter Sunday, whatever
And that
date
was, is that 1988?
Yes.
Is that April 2nd? Or-
I'm not sure. April 2nd. If it's the Saturday before
Prior to
Easter Sunday,
Easter
whatever
in
date
88.
that is.
Okay. No further questions?
Can you read that direct?
Just to clear up the date, it could be April 3rd, it could be April 4th, you're not sure.
It was the Saturday before Easter Sunday.
Okay. I have nothing further.
If that's important, if we know the year, if we get the proper documents, the court could take judicial notice of when Easter fell on that particular, in that particular year. So,
No further questions, Judge.
okay.